What rules were put in place because of you? No sign language during silent lunch punishment. My lunch period was so loud we got put on silent lunch for over a month straight. I decided the only clear solution was to teach my entire table sign language so that we could still talk without getting in trouble. Apparently, it was unfair to the kids who didn't know how to sign, so we had to stop. A friend of mine in a military school found out the regs never stated what color the bed sheets for a bed made for inspection had to be in. So this madman went and bought Power Ranger sheets and made the perfect regulation bed. I have never seen so many sergeants lose their crap but be unable to do anything since the regs were perfectly followed. Needless to say, the next year they were updated to state sheets must be plain white. Back in the day, a radio station had a weekly trivia contest. The prize was a free pizza and movie rental. Somehow my mom figured out which book they were using for the trivia questions. She bought it and memorized all the answers. Each week we would call in immediately. Sometimes we were the first, but even if we weren't, it didn't matter because the other people were usually just guessing. We won almost every time. Even though we changed up who would actually make the call, they eventually figured out we were all from the same household. So they made it a rule that you couldn't win if your family had already won in the last month or whatever. Up until then, we enjoyed a lot of free pizzas. My brother and I got into a cattle prod sword fight at a farm store. We shocked the hell out of each other a few times, and now they are locked up. We were in our 30s. I put a croissant in one of those hotel toasters. It soon became engulfed in flames and needed extinguishing. The next day at breakfast, they made a sign that said, "If you'd like your croissant toasted, please ask a member of the staff." When I was walking home from school, I had to walk next to the road to get to my house. I decided to see if I could walk with my eyes closed. I didn't feel the transition from gravel to road, and the cars didn't honk at me as they made a line, because they thought I was deaf. I heard a noise, looked back, and one ran off the street and into an orchard. 2 weeks later, they put up deaf child area signs on both sides of the road that I live on. My junior high made a rule against yo-yos in class after I tried to do a trick and my yo-yo flew across the room and broke a glass beaker set. I'm sorry, guys. At a ballpark I worked concessions at, they had an all-you-can-eat promo day where tickets were more expensive than usual, but concessions around the stadium were free, excluding alcohol. So I worked that day, and of course, it was chaos, but when the line started dying down later in the game, they started sending some of the hourly employees home, myself included. But of course, I didn't go home. After I clocked out, I stayed in the stadium and got some cheeseburgers and Philly steak and soda and found an empty seat in the crowd for the last few innings. Next year, same promo, but new rule for staff. If you get sent home early, you have to actually leave the stadium. In middle school, I would use Sharpies to tattoo myself. Other kids thought it was so cool, so I started charging $1 per drawing whatever they wanted. The principal found out, and after I wouldn't stop, she put a ban on Sharpies for the entire school. Even the teachers couldn't bring them in. I'm a tattoo artist now. My younger brother was always late to school, small school, and was tardy. He figured out that if he just skipped the first period and went to the second, he was counted as being on school, and there was no late penalty because he was at second period on time. They changed this the following year. No typewriters in class. I was kind of a crap kid, and while my school allowed us to use laptops, I would play video games. Primarily Warcraft 3 in class. No sound or anything, so I wasn't being a complete nuisance, but I wasn't doing my work. A teacher told me I couldn't use my laptop. I just so happened to have a 1950s Remington Quiet Writer Portable, all-mechanical typewriter. It was anything but quiet, with all of the taka-taka, taka-taka-taka ding you'd expect from a typewriter. After one full day of studiously taking notes and doing my assignments via typewriter, my teacher said I could use my laptop as long as I didn't bring the typewriter to class. My elementary school was located in the center of the neighborhood, and my 5th grade class was the first to get outdoor trailers for classrooms. We'd ask for bathroom passes and then walk home. Next year, they built a fence around the school. Golf users can no longer return an unlimited number of balls for tokens. When I was maybe 12-ish, there was a kids' outdoor play area. Go-karts, batting cages, and indoor were something like Chuck E. Cheese token-based games, etc. You could get a wristband for maybe $15 and it'd get you unlimited rides, mini golf, and some other activities. Everything else cost tokens. When you finished golfing, you'd get 2 tokens for bringing your ball back. Unlimited golf, 50 cents worth of play value inside. So my friends and I would go there, speed run 2 golf games and give the balls back. $1 to our pockets. Later on, we just started fishing balls out of the water hazards and turning them in. Subtly at first, and then in bulk later. The guys working there didn't care or actively laughed at it. So we'd have a few hundred tokens. Then we started selling them for 5 for $1. We stopped buying unlimited bands. I'd bike there and earn $25 in a couple of hours. Management eventually caught on and altered the token for ball exchange. Male students are not allowed to wear hair accessories. We had the rule about hair not touching collars. Couldn't be past eyebrows or over the ears. I grew my hair out and just put it up in headbands. After receiving multiple detentions and fighting them and winning, the next year they made the rule. A minor one, but when I was in elementary school, we had one of those bridge building challenges using toothpicks and hot glue. My partner and I realized if we just coated the entire thing with a thick-ass layer of hot glue, it would make our bridge strong as hell. So we used a full pack of hot glue sticks, like 20 of them. It was more glue than toothpicks, so after that they limited the number of glue sticks that you could use. In history class in high school, there was about 10 of us really close friends. We could take every opportunity to make your mom jokes. A couple months into the class, the teacher made us sign a treaty promising to stop making fun of each other's moms. We signed it and started making fun of each other's dads. Improvise, adapt, overcome. No more than 4 margaritas per person on dollar margarita and drink night. In college, some friends and I used to go to a Mexican restaurant every Thursday and often on Saturdays for $1 margaritas. As a group, we would go through a lot, and they put the rule in. Then they changed it to $2 margaritas and $1 draft drinks. A local amusement park added a no blindfolds on the roller coasters rule because of me. When I was in middle school, my friends and I thought it would enhance the overall experience if we blindfolded ourselves on the biggest roller coaster at a local amusement park. We got one of those pictures they take on the ride, and there we are, blindfolded in the middle of a tunnel, having the time of our lives. Looking back, we easily could have strangled ourselves or worse, because we literally just used scarves tied around our heads. Next year, we went back to the same roller coaster and they had added a no blindfolds or loose accessories to the list of rules before the ride. No makeup. I went to an all-boys school, and apparently this never came up until my emo friends and I rocked up in black eyeliner and lipstick. I had to sue my school district back in high school just to leave special education after fighting it for over a decade. Special education students now have the right built into every single IEP to attend any standard education class in their grade level or below, earn the associated credits, and also go to both health education and driver's education. They could do none of that before the lawsuit. I don't think it was a rule, but it was kind of an unspoken thing. I was the only brown kid in my school and would act out for attention and acceptance, and my classmates would get a huge laugh out of it, but I would be sent to the principal's office every day. I think my principal knew I wasn't a bad kid, just looking for attention. He moved a permanent desk into his office for me, and every day when I got sent down, I would sit there. Had my name on it and everything. By the end of that school year, I would pack snacks for the both of us. Haven't thought about that principal in a while, but I hope he is well and was as patient with the other kids as he was with me. My older brother got a curfew enforced at Boy Scout camp when one of the leaders noticed him walking around the area in the daytime with his eyes closed, counting steps. He may have just been practicing being blind, but the adults assumed he was figuring out how to get around at night without lights so that he could get into some kind of mischief, which, knowing my brother, was also possible. I had a teacher in the 7th grade that banned the use of the word shamu. We apparently were using it as a joke answer to everything, which I had started doing as a once-in-a-lifetime joke for the 1-hour period. News spread. I guess that she didn't like it, and soon all 7 class periods were giggling and saying shamu to everything she said. I came in 2 days later to a referral, an accusation that I had organized the shamu party, and the entirety of her classes were instructed to never mention shamu in her presence again. It was obscure, to say the least. So I've noticed a few replies saying she thought I was calling her fat. Yes, I believe that was true, and I'm sorry that that was something I caused. I was a young kid from San Diego who went to SeaWorld twice a month from birth to 6th grade, moved to Northern Virginia, and shamu was just sort of a concept to me. Reading the comments, I actually feel horrified. I never had any intention of doing something like that. I pray that wasn't what happened. Well, I doubt they're teaching the class these days, but when I took advanced programming techniques using Fortran, our professor added a line to all of our projects stating that all programs had to be written in Fortran and only in Fortran. When a student asked why he'd added that, he told the class to ask me. I just grinned. I still got a perfect score on the one where I had a Fortran shell call an assembler subroutine which did 99.99% of the work. I used to work for a company that had flex hours. You could work all you want but no overtime. So I would work 4 10-hour days and then take 3-day weekends. That lasted for about 2 months before my employer made a rule that we had to be there 5 days a week. Then I used to come in at 4 a.m. to avoid traffic, skip lunch, and then leave at noon, and nobody noticed for about 6 months. But they figured out I was not coming back after lunch and changed the policy so I could not come to work until 8 a.m. So I started working lots of extra time and started banking my flex time and saved up about 430 hours by October, 10 hours a week of overtime, and was informed by HR that I could not roll it over in the new year, so I scheduled a 12-week vacation. Yeah, they made a new rule over that too. When COVID hit, I had to stay home. I figured out I could do a side gig, so I got a second work-from-home job and worked both until I got caught, and they laid me off. After that, there was a new rule. I just like hacking the systems they set up. They were so difficult to work for that I wanted to figure out a way to make it work for me. Local job center no longer has working USB ports on public PCs because I found private files on multiple PCs with far too much private information about strangers. The dual major on my degree is no longer offered after I proved it would have been logistically impossible to graduate with it without my specific transfer credits. No citing the Geneva Conventions or accusing management of war crimes. I used to ride on the bottom area of the shopping carts at my nearest grocery store. I thought it was fun to put my hands on the front of it, sliding them along the ground while the cart was moving. One sticky spot on the ground later and my hand was put back and my thumb went right under the wheel. I crunched my little thumbnail and my mom had to remove it. Anyway, the store put up signs after that saying it's against the rules for kids to ride in the bottom of carts. Not me, but a coworker. The whole company now requires that if you have a lanyard for your name tag, it must break away on the back because she got it caught on a top shelf and it choked her. Back in elementary school, I remember there used to be this kid who followed me everywhere and actively tried to hurt me. When talking to a teacher about it, they went, "Oh, he just has a crush on you." The next day I walked up to the kid and shoved him into a wall. After that, there was literally a rule in that grade, don't follow other students. That backfired poorly. My elementary school pet and hobby fair now strictly says pet submissions cannot be human. English media class in high school. End of year project was to film a movie. Me and 3 other guys decided to film a gangster movie. Long story short, while filming the final shootout scene behind a local post office, we were swarmed by police and almost got shot. One of the guys got arrested and my teacher almost got fired. The following year, the curriculum was changed and the final project was now an essay to be completed on a popular movie. We were filming a school shootout scene behind the post office. What we didn't know was that there was a retirement residence right next to it. Apparently, several of the residents called 911 about a bunch of kids shooting each other outside. 5 police cruisers rolled up and surrounded us. They all jumped out with guns drawn. "Drop the gun! Drop the gun! Get on the ground!" We were all face down on the pavement with guns to our heads. A minute later, one cop is like, "They're fake. They're all fake." The officers were upset. They ran our names, and unfortunately, the one guy that had nothing to do with anything gets arrested. I felt so bad. He wasn't a part of the class. Just last second, we asked if he'd help us film, and he agreed. They take the rest of us back to school, and we're sitting in the office as a police officer reams out our teacher and the principal. "I almost shot a bunch of kids. How the hell are you allowing this to happen during school hours? What kind of project allows guns?" Fun times. Don't trick your siblings or friends into eating soap. I would cut bars of Dove soap into pieces, wrap them in old candy wrappers, and pretend like they were mints. I was 8 or 9. As a kindergartner, I once fell asleep in the bus. When I woke up, the bus was in the garage, and I had to yell to get someone to get me out. So to this day, every bus driver in my school district needs to walk to the back of the bus and check every seat before they park the bus. Seems like a good rule to have. Military school I went to, after me, an adult is required to check the parade cannon to ensure it is clear and closely monitor the students as they load it. There is never to be another flaming rubber chicken flying over the parade grounds ever again. Circa 1989. No stealing from the cash drawer at work or theft in general. I wasn't the one stealing, but was managing a hotel when I caught an employee taking $20 out of the cash drawer and putting it in his pocket. I of course fired him on the spot and figured that was the end of it. 2 weeks later, I get an unemployment notice from the state showing he filed for wrongful dismissal. I responded back stating he was terminated for theft. A week later, they asked me to send them our employee handbook and training materials. Shortly thereafter, I received notice that they awarded him unemployment because nowhere in our handbook or training materials did it explicitly state he was not allowed to take cash from the cash drawer. You would think that would just be common sense, but apparently, the state of Wisconsin didn't agree. From that moment on, it was explicitly stated in the handbook and training materials that employees were not allowed to take money or any other property that does not belong to them. The school website is no longer accessible outside of school hours. My high school biology teacher added briefly to all of the essay questions on his tests and quizzes because if I was bored, I could write unnecessarily long answers in really small handwriting just to take up time. He pointed out the word briefly when handing out a test and said to me, "I added that for you." So I made my next answer even longer out of spite. No longer allowed to play IRA propaganda music on the jukebox at a random dive bar in Oklahoma, USA. None of us were Irish, have Irish family members, or were old enough to have any real opinion on the Troubles. Just thought the boys made some bangers back in the day. I graduated with my PhD in April of 2020. As graduation was virtual, they asked us to take a nice picture that would pop up when they read our names off. The email said family that had been integral to your journey could be in your picture. So I took a picture with my dog and sent it in. The next day, they sent another email that said you couldn't have pets or family in your picture. I never sent them another picture, so they used it. Back in the 1980s, we were allowed to pick our own high school classes. My freshman year, I picked 2 gym classes back to back, and the school said no one had ever done that before. Only one gym class was allowed to be scheduled after that. I'm kind of a legend. When I was younger, tampons will not be lit on fire and thrown out the windows of this house. Look, Dad, if you just bought us fireworks, I wouldn't have needed to improvise, but boy oh boy was that a rough period. Freshman year of high school, I had to give an oral presentation on a random Greek god. This was at Christian school for context. I got Dionysus, so naturally I spent many hours researching on YouTube how to act wasted. Wasn't much of a partier, so I didn't know, and pretended to be absolutely wasted for my presentation. It was a great success, but my teacher unsurprisingly banned Dionysus for the following years. It didn't help that Dionysus was basically the god of orgies and bestiality too, if I remember correctly. Not my story, but a story recounted to me. I took a Quran class in college, and my professor assigned us a major project due at the end of the semester on some facets of Islam. We were allowed to pick any topic except for religious extremism, and said that topic wasn't allowed because of what had happened a few years back. Apparently, a student of his had chosen bin Laden as his project and would look up information about extremism and terrorism. He was a psych major, so he found radicalization interesting and wanted to develop a paper on how someone became a terrorist. This involved him reading a bunch of writings from bin Laden and researching terrorist movements and people associated with terrorism. Mind you, this was all for the paper. The student was not religious at all and had absolutely no interest in extremism. Well, at the end of the semester, he turns in this awesome project, and the year ends. The student is from out of state and is going to fly back to his family, except he's stopped at the airport. He gets told by the TSA that he's on the no-fly list. Apparently, his extensive research flagged him as an extremist, and there's now an investigation into him. They literally took him into another room and gave him a bunch of questions. They even called my professor to have him show the paper to corroborate his story. It all got cleared up in the end, but it was a nightmare. Because of that, the class stayed away from religious extremism. My professor said he was even nervous about researching terrorism at all because he didn't want a repeat of what had happened. Not me, but my wife missed a lot of high school for several reasons. She'd go long periods without showing up, but would always make up the work and keep her grades up. Once graduation came around, she was told she couldn't graduate because she missed too many days. She argued this because there was no attendance policy in place. She was allowed to graduate after writing one final paper, but they quickly added a new policy after she left. You have to actually talk to the customers who come to your stand. I got all the clocks removed from the psych ward. According to a friend who went back to that particular unit recently, they're still gone 3 years later. No playing Doom on the school computers during break. A local self-serve frozen yogurt shop had a special for birthdays, where you pay for a small cup and you can load it up as much as you want. Typically, the yogurt was measured by ounces, and you paid based on the weight. In high school, my friends and I, about 8 total, did this for everyone's birthday. We would make towers of yogurt that looked like Christmas trees sitting on a very tiny stand. Definitely over a pound of yogurt each. On the last attempt, the owner recognized us and immediately told us that we needed to pay for our yogurt. We told her that the rules were as much as we could fit in the cup. She tried fighting us, but being stubborn high school students, we wouldn't budge. A couple weeks later, we attempted to get our service again, and they had changed the birthdays to 12 and under. No more ridiculously cheap yogurt for us. Not me, but my high school coach. I believed he was 19 to 20 at the time. Hooked up with a girl on the women's team. Got fired. Fast forward about 5 years later, I'm becoming a coach for the boys' team. We had to take a few classes in CPR. One of the classes, to sum it up, was about protecting yourself, not having the kids on social media giving them rides, etc. That class was implemented because of my coach. A certain institution no longer has an annual contest on St. Patrick's Day to see who can drink the most shots of kamikazes. My high school created a rule that no one can graduate early. Mine and my brother's fault. I'm sure they just want the tuition money. Tire shop I worked at required that no employee could be scheduled for more hours than the manager was. I had just graduated from high school and thus had a lot of free time on my hands. My work knew this, of course, and scheduled me to work Monday through Saturday. Worked 50 hours a week. A coworker of mine got wrapped into those shifts as well, for the whole summer. Manager only worked 40 hours a week. Corporate saw this, I suppose, and made a company-wide 900-plus stores across the US policy stating that the manager can't be scheduled for fewer hours than the minimum wage employees. My mom got a library card at a new place many months before I did. When she got hers, she was welcome to check out however many books she wanted at the time. So she left with her shiny new card and 30 books for a project. When I got mine, those books had still not been returned, and new cardholders could only take out 5 books at a time. She still has those books, so I definitely don't blame the library. No Pokemon cards at school. I came to school one day to show off the holographic Charizard I had gotten the day before. Later that day, it went missing and I was devastated. The next day, another kid shows up with one and I know it's mine. He claims he got it from a pack and his brother can back him up. But I didn't buy it, and others didn't too. It led to this whole big thing and they ended up banning Pokemon cards from avoiding future situations like that. It sucked that I was partly at fault for ruining something for others, but I had suffered a great injustice because I knew that was my card. No bouncy balls in the bathrooms. In middle school, we had a school store that sold supplies and these tiny bouncy balls. I still don't know why. The bathrooms in this school were narrow and made of brick from floor to ceiling. I discovered that if you threw a bouncy ball in the bathroom as hard as you can, it would bounce until the end of time. Get 3 to 4 of your buddies in the bathroom with a ball of their own, and now you have an epic game of life and death. It became the most popular sport the school had ever seen. People were even placing bets. When one kid had to explain that his bruises didn't come from his parents, my operation was shut down. No sleeping under the bed. No ties in high school. Apparently, it went against the dress code. They wanted us to act and look professional, and all of a sudden that wasn't okay. Wasn't old or mature enough to speak against it. Local politician visited my school. We had a question period with him, and I asked a rather pointed and difficult question aimed at his political party. Years later, when I was running summer camps, he visited another camp near mine. He now requires all questions from kids and students to be vetted ahead of time by the adults in charge. Don't know for sure if it was because of me, but it does seem to track. Why else would you have to vet questions from kids? The valedictorian speech at my high school now needs to be reviewed by the principal before the ceremony for content and length. If your parent works at the school, you are permitted to enter the building with them before school, provided you stay with them at all times. The family changing rooms in the fitness center now has signs that say, "No couples." Only allowed one slice of pizza and must order a drink. My high school had to change all the rules for their physics challenges. Bridge built from cardboard and glue. Did you know if you shred and then soak cardboard in epoxy resin, you can produce a solid block that has more in common with plywood than cardboard? They tried to claim it was no longer cardboard until I pointed out the words "unlimited lamination" in the rules. I was just laminating the cardboard tens of thousands of times. The next year, the school provided both the cardboard and the glue and specified a minimum size for the pieces. Concrete boat? Did you know there are buoyant concretes made for statuary and the waste processing industry? And that the manufacturers are more than happy to supply samples of their otherwise expensive product? They tried to claim I hadn't used concrete until I ponied up the bag and shipping document that clearly stated part number concrete. The next year, the school provided Portland cement for the challenge with the added rule that you couldn't add anything to it except water. There was also a lightweight bridge competition one year where the goal was to build the lightest bridge capable of holding 1 pound of household materials. My bridge featured decorative helium balloons and was thus lighter than air. I was disqualified until another teacher pointed out that the bridge did indeed have mass. They were just unable to measure it without more specialized equipment. I was then disqualified because helium wasn't a common household item. I only used helium because hydrogen, which you can make easily at home, would be an explosion hazard. Earned me my A. The next year, the school reworked the competition so that the bridge had to be built from drinking straws that the school provided. Thanks for watching until the end. Do you have an example you'd like to give? Please leave it in the comments below. Then be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you know when our next video is available. For more videos like this one right now, please stop by our channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.